Oh.
Go ahead, because I don't care.
Jody? Maybe that's not Jody.
Somebody else talking.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. I looked over your minutes, Doug,
Okay,
and they look good to me,
good.
so I make a motion to approve.
It is me, Chris. I'm sorry, my phone was on mute.
Oh, okay. I like talking. Why aren't they hearing me? And then number 2, the resolution number 3674, the CPACE resolution. Anybody have any thoughts on that? We're gonna be voting on it tonight, or having a hearing tonight. Our first hearing, right?
It's a resolution, so there's no public hearing.
Oh, no public hearing, okay.
The question I have is the presentation that they've given,
Mhm.
I don't think we've posted that online yet, and we probably need to post it online, and I know the business community kind of wanted to see. Do you have a copy of those slides that they?
No, but I can get, a copy. I can email Carolyn right now. So do you think that we ought to, push this off until,
I don't think we need
Or
to,
just
but I
put it
think if
into
we
the
want people
package.
to utilize it,
okay.
is it Carolyn or Kat, or who'd the email have come from?
Carolyn, but I don't think she ever sent us a copy of the
I don't remember seeing it.
program. So I'll email her.
One of the bankers at the Business Alliance meeting was unaware of this program and felt that they should know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, plus all the other
And I'll actually forward it out,
Oh,
once we get a copy of it, I'll forward it to
The RLBA.
the RLBA and have them send it out just based on the questions
Yeah.
that came up yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm not using my outside voice, sorry.
All right.
And I guess that's where I don't have a problem with moving forward with action on it, but, if council feels that they want to table it until the community has had a chance to see the hard copy, but, I mean, it's part of, the presentation was, there's this recording that was out there. There was a presentation in council meeting last time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the public has the information. If council's comfortable moving forward, I don't think there's any problem with that, but I think we ought to make the slides readily available to people who have an
Yeah.
interest as well.
Agree.
But
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that, it's
At
just
the
an
same time-
authorization.
I see no downside to it.
Yeah, it's just
So-
an authorization.
Right,
No downside to
the program.
tabling it or to moving forward with the program.
I mean,
Okay.
I thought you were suggesting that people needed to see it before we.
Oh, no,
voted.
no, I think they've had the opportunity to do so, so I don't think it's a factor.
Okay. All right,
Do we
Let's do
decide
that.
I can stay, we have a quorum?
No, it's a posted meeting, so we're okay.
all right, and then let's move on to number 3. Do you want to talk about that, Mayor?
I will defer to Brian on this one, because this is a this was something that we were reminded of, an upcoming deadline as I was transatlantically outbound, but Brian and Lonnie had some ideas on it, so do you want to head and speak to what this addresses specifically?
Do you wanna talk about the actual
Yeah,
program?
so the program itself is House Bill 355. So this came up last year through legislation, where towns and cities could apply. I'm not quite sure where the money came from that the state got, but they allocated it for cities and towns to use for infrastructure within their towns. But you had to start like a project list or whatever. Well, the previous mayor, she started one with the engineers and stuff. And, then when it moved over into new administration and stuff, we never held a public hearing on those projects last year. So the deadline.
What were the projects?
Well, so the ones that they identified, were a lot of the water, sewer, stormwater, which we've already, got funding for all of those things. The city hall was part of one of those projects that was included in that list. So, March 24th was the deadline that we thought, and so after that came and passed, we just didn't work on it at all. So, but I got a phone call from the lead, someone who's like out up there, and she's like, you guys still have money sitting here, you guys haven't applied, you guys still have time. She's like, as long as you guys did a public hearing, and I was like, I went back through, I was like, we didn't do a public hearing. I was like, can we still, she's like, if you can get it done here in the next, very soon, she's like, you guys can still apply for it. So that started the ball rolling. We, as us, us here, we determined City Hall would be the best use of those funds because there's no funding out there for public buildings. It is very, very hard to find any kind of funding. And our general fund and resort tax can't be used for it either because it wasn't identified as something that could be used for. So, the upstairs is, we've done some upgrades down here, but the wiring in this building is the biggest issue. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember when Kristen showed you guys that chunk of wire that came out of the wall down here, and I don't know where that went, Mayor, do you?
I think it's still up there.
Is it? Okay. But that was the project. So the public hearing for tonight is to, get any public comment regarding the project. So that's the main thing that we have to get, and then we can get the application, which we started the application yesterday. It's actually a pretty simple application. We've had contractors come in all last week to look at what needs to be done. So it'll be, demo of, and all of this will be upstairs, so it'll be the demolition of the walls, ripping everything out. Brian talked about the ceilings as well, having new wiring.
We're gonna basically take it down to the bones of the structure and start over. We're gonna.
You're gonna take out walls and redo walls, or?
No, just the covering of the walls.
Everything, the walls, lid, because we're gonna come in and we're gonna actually run a new service to City Hall. Because currently it goes through the police department and then back in.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have City Hall will have its own service. We're gonna get rid of the original stuff from when this was the fire department and put in an actual up to code 200 amp meter and rewire the entire upstairs. And while we're at it, we're gonna update all the plumbing upstairs that needs to be done. We're gonna run gas lines up there because in the upstairs, I'm gonna put in a high efficient, forced air HVAC system with probably a heat pump and an air conditioner out on the roof. So we'll update the gas lines. I'm gonna bring all the insulation up to code, in the walls and the lid. And so when we're done, communication, everything, and as we're doing it, we're gonna stub stuff out appropriately, so that way someday when we renovate downstairs, everything's ready. So if we get an opportunity to move downstairs and do some of these upgrades, everything's ready. So it's gonna be all new, from just like, other than the framing. We'll fix any framing issues that arise as we open stuff up, but,
Yeah, you never know what you're gonna find in a building this old.
yeah, and,
We know what we're not gonna find.
yeah, so, yeah, it's a complete redo.
So this
And
is, everything you just described, this was previously approved under the previous administration?
Well, it was one of the projects identified,
Oh.
was renovating City Hall.
They came out at the very last minute and said, hey, you got 2 weeks, write a and so it was just like every idea in the book, you wrote it down. And then it's kind of, okay, what is it that is an unmet need that's an appropriate place to do this? And it came and went so quick, we thought it was a missed opportunity, and then they just called and said, no, it's still here, but there is a deadline that's coming up now.
And we know how much it is?
It's 209,000 is what the city can get. We do have to do a 25% match, which in our budget, we have the capital fund project. That money can be used for the match, and there's like 121,000, so 25% is like 52.
Does that air conditioning include down here?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But we're gonna get rid of, I'm gonna remove and cap all the radiant heaters up there that aren't working, because everything's so old and plugged. Eventually, we'll move down here and upgrade everything on this floor to bring everything up to code.
There's no way to get the air conditioning from up there into this room. I remember summer when we had this place full of people that wanted to attend city council meeting, but the air conditioning window unit was so loud that you couldn't hear.
So at that point, when we get stuff opened up, me and Kyle can look, and we might be able to drop a couple vents down.
That would be wonderful.
Basically, it's what's the best use until we run out of $209,000?
And the building department's gonna throw in some for matching, because my office is here. So, I mean, we have
If there's any way to.
plenty of funds for the matching, but we can look at that and possibly see if we can't drop a couple, returns down here for air conditioning in the summer.
Yeah,
It'll all be run off of what's upstairs,
yeah.
but eventually, we've talked about a mini split system in here, which then can roll through to get rid of all these old antiquated radiators
Right.
that aren't working. I mean, heating City Hall is pretty tough right now, but,
It's too bad CPACE can't be used that way.
but we can definitely look at that, putting,
Okay.
and those are the type of
Why
things that if
why
little things
couldn't
come up.
CPACE,
Because they don't go for the municipalities, correct?
Yeah,
Oh,
municipalities cannot
okay,
be,
it has to be commercial, okay.
So-
private.
Yeah, yeah.
Brian, I know it's a late ask, is there a possibility you could attend the meeting tonight?
Sorry.
Okay, the other, modification I would like to make on it is I'd like to switch under 9B and C, I'd like to switch the order on them. So what we'll do is we'll entertain a motion, to approve the resolution. We'll talk about it and do an introduction, kind of what's there, and then after we've talked about it, then we'll do the public hearing, because then the public knows what they may want to speak to or offer their 2 cents. Any objections to that? Okay.
We really think it's an opportunity to get something done with City Hall.
It desperately needs it.
It
that-
does.
Yeah.
that needs it, and, we might not see it again.
Yeah.
Now, is there a deadline on these funds that have to be spent by a certain date?
Yeah, so once we apply for them, then there's some other steps we have to take. Once we submit the application, once they approve it, we have to get them on the management plan and stuff. But with the application, we'll upload all of the quotes that we've gotten from the contractors. We're putting Brian as the head in charge
Point
of
of
it.
contact.
General contractor.
So we have to send his resume to prove that he is somebody capable of handling it, which he totally. And then, I think you have, it's 2027 is the deadline to use all the funds.
Which should be no problem, right?
Yeah.
We're hoping to do this for winter projects, and get her knocked out.
As quick as they tell us.
When do
Yes,
you
we
find
have
out,
to-
or is
but
it
that might be-
guaranteed that the funds are there?
The funds are
For Red
there,
Lodge?
it's just a matter of getting the application and they're going through it and making sure.
To rephrase, is it a competitive grant, or we just have to check the boxes and we have it.
Yeah, because each town is allocated, there's a spreadsheet that has every town and how much they're getting.
To use it or lose it.
Yeah,
But, and it's not something that somebody else is gonna come up with a better proposal
No.
and they get our money.
no, absolutely, no, it's tied, that money is tied to.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
It could take months, though, to do all this paperwork on their
I don't
behalf.
think it's months, maybe.
It turns out you can just ignore it for lots of months and then they tell you at the end and you do it in 2 weeks.
Right.
So I'm assuming since we're kind of late to the game, others have, already
Move
applied
forward.
and stuff, so,
Shouldn't be a delay.
no, but, so, once council approves, well, and all they need is proof of, from the council anyways, on their end, was proof of a public hearing, so sending them the agenda. But I had Dennison do up that resolution just to make it official with the council, so.
Out of curiosity, how's the city gonna continue to operate when the whole upstairs is gone?
So currently, the mayor and the city attorney are the only ones up there.
Yeah.
We can read
And I work from down here as frequently as not anyway, so we'll make it work. That'll be our problem. That's the administrative side of it, not the legislative side of it.
Yeah,
But there will be, like Brian said, there will probably be a couple days where we will have to shut down all of city halls to,
Make that
just
transition
with
from
the
the
power part
electrical,
of
Yeah.
it.
couple days that we're just gonna have to just close up and
rather
get that
than drag it
transition,
out.
because
Yeah.
part of it is chasing everything that's been put together through the years to make sure that once we get the new power run, we can run a feeder down and make sure that everything down here has power as we're working upstairs. So there might be, it's a couple days to figure out, okay, we got power, now let's turn stuff on and see where, what are we missing?
Yeah.
Make sure all the computers start, make sure everybody's got power down here, and at that time, we'll be able to identify where we're missing.
And we'll see if we can figure out how we're gonna do that, whether we do some of that on a weekend, or if we do temporarily, we'll be working out of
And it
the
could
senior
happen.
center or the Elks, or, I mean, we'll try to figure out how to make it as least impactful as possible.
And we could ultimately do it like on a weekend. And then that's-
But we have dependencies on outside folks as part of the problem.
But it's one big step to getting City Hall where it needs to be if this is gonna be City Hall forever.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point we need to do it. Yeah.
So, might as well do it with other people's money.
Yeah, and if upstairs, if we get through that and then we're still rolling, we've talked about possibly, then move some people upstairs, utilize that, and maybe the back half of City Hall start, hey, let's start getting back here.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, this room and the main part of the office might be the only last two parts of this entire project that needs to be completely updated, so.
So if this group has not, I'm assuming the CPACE resolution, everybody's already read previously, and then this resolution is a first pass that's not come through us, so, please make sure to read through that and see if anything jumps out at you.
But there's no time to spare.
The 355, that's pretty cut and dry.
Authorize the mayor to select the best eligible projects, authorize the mayor and clerk to submit the paperwork, and, authorizing the city to utilize funds to meet the matches. That's basically what the resolution is.
So the only question I have in these projects, and I'm sure it's already something that you're considering, is sustainable options. Just from the sustainability board, I imagine that they would appreciate when we can go with high efficiency or any sort of green
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's pretty much.
We just do that in
But-
everything that's
Well, that's-
possible.
That's
Yeah.
why we've talked about, because we have that roof out there.
Yeah.
We can put a heat pump.
Yeah.
Out, a high efficient heat pump, which will give us air conditioning upstairs and into this room. So it's all, and just bringing the walls up to energy
Oh,
code
God, yeah.
and the ceiling and everything, the insulation, it's just gonna make that upstairs so much.
Love it. Yeah. I just, again, would be remiss if I did not mention it,
Yep,
so.
no.
Absolutely.
And, to, go on top of that is, do you I mean, is there any opportunity to do solar or anything down the
This-
line, like,
This
that you can check
structure,
for?
we've been through this on this structure, and this structure does not have the adequate load to hold any additional weight. That's,
So they
just
were-
like the metal building back there, we went through maybe possibly putting on there, and the engineer reports were, let's not add any more weight,
Okay,
because nothing was built to today's standards.
yeah.
So I would say,
Just love that ringtone.
I would say solar's probably not in the future for this building.
Okay.
But if we can get everything else up to high efficiency, Energy Star rated, that I think the entire cost will come down.
And we
Yeah,
did
so you
replace
can
the
see.
windows upstairs here a few years ago, and then when they did all the LED lights upstairs, those have all been changed out and stuff, so those upgrades have happened, but getting the insulation.
That'd be huge.
Cool. What's the R value you're shooting for?
R21 minimum, I mean, that's minimum requirement. And then in the attic, we're gonna jump to an R49.
Mm.
And it's gonna be foam, so it's gonna be sealed,
You can spray.
so it's gonna create a great air barrier, we're not gonna have air leakage.
Nice,
It'll be energy efficient.
yeah.
R21 for the wall,
And
does it cost more to do R30?
most walls, you can't get R30. 'cause
Yeah.
Yeah, because on a standard 2x6 wall, R21 is a couple inches of foam and then a bat, depending on what you want to use, but R30, you almost have to jump to a 2x8 wall or go more spray foam, but then the cost jumps so much
Right.
that the return might not be there.
Yeah.
They've been pushing that in the building department, in the side of the building for a long time, trying to get these R values way up, and the pushback is like, how do you want to tell a homeowner that they have to spend an extra $15,000 on insulation because you guys want a little more R value? So the air sealing of the building is a big portion of it, to where, you know, if we can seal the building off so we're not getting drafts, we're not getting air leaks, the heat's not escaping, and maintain these levels, it's turning out to be a really good.
Efficient.
Yep.
All right, who wants to introduce us tonight?
There's two of you.
I'll just say I'll entertain a motion for resolution number 3675, and if one of you two don't jump in, then somebody else is gonna say, what took you? No. But yeah.
Well,
Let's put one out there.
okay, but then who's gonna, I should
Oh,
rephrase that, who's gonna talk about it after it is
He,
introduced? You're
he
just gonna-
is, you missed that. I'm gonna basically turn the time over to Brian to talk
Okay.
about it and be there.
All right.
And so it'll be Brian and Lonnie.
Okay.
Sorry, I misunderstood the question.
Yeah, I think I misstated it, I haven't had any copy yet.
I'll explain the project. Okay.
Alrighty, so, next up is number 4, short-term ordinance business registration discussion.
If-
Yeah, go ahead.
May I just add a little 2 cents, that this is for discussion tonight. I know there's been some concern that this went to admin and finance and not, for instance, to land use and planning or public safety. And it's one of those things that really goes in every one of them. And my recollection is that the reason it ended up here was, as the council discussed it, it was kind of just, that it was, most of the changes had to do with the registration of short-term rentals, and it had to kind of do with that. It is not, in my mind, it is not a foregone conclusion that just because it's on the agenda for discussion tonight, that automatically means it's ready for action next week. This is just the opportunity for the whole council to weigh in and address their concerns and comments, on that. So we'll have that part of discussion tonight, and then when it's said and done, is if a majority of the council feels, yes, it's ready to go to action next time, or if the majority of the council says, yes, let's discuss that, you know, that's, it's just, the main purpose of this second half of the agenda is to make the action portion of the agenda very dull and boring. So, I anticipate, based on just emails that I've seen and go through, that there's probably, going to be some questions and concerns that come up here, and my 2 cents is, that's fine, that's fantastic, that's the process working the way it's supposed to. So let's just make sure we have a civil discussion tonight and give all, because this part of this is, I mean, there's 3 members on this committee, but there's also 3 members of council that aren't part of this committee. Some have some awareness and some may not as much, so. Anyway, like I said, that's just kind of an emphasis that it's on for discussion tonight, and to me, it's the process working the way it's supposed to, so.
Okay, Jody, are you still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Are you up to talking about this?
Well, for a little bit, it is just up for discussion tonight because the business registration, we still have to do some more cleanup. We really just wanted to get council's input on what we've done so far on the short-term rentals. So I don't anticipate this being up for a public hearing or vote until probably, it'll be probably the first meeting in February. So we just have done, as you know, and you and Chelsea and Doug know, we've done a lot of work on this. And before we proceed further, we really wanted to get council's full input. So I'll let, you and Chelsea go ahead and can discuss where we're at. Did get the review semi-done, and thanks, Chris, for your feedback on that. And I agree, I kind of was just putting drafts in there to make it look pretty. So I do agree on taking some of those out, so. But yeah, go ahead and just talk about it.
What was in there to make it look pretty? I missed that.
Oh, there were a couple of graphs that I just said
Oh.
that were probably not necessary, because there were like two numbers, and they didn't really show much, so it felt like they were.
Yeah,
This is-
no, but
this is-
everybody said make it look pretty with graphs, so I did.
Yeah, and then.
Honestly, I like the graph, and I'm not sure if you noticed, but I did make some edits to that last night as well.
What time?
Okay, thank you.
Or around the same time you were on.
Oh, okay.
I saw your little icon on there.
Oh, okay.
One concern that I will say that I've seen raised, and I think it's valid anytime we're changing ordinances, it would be really nice to have basically the existing municipal code and then like a highlighter comment that says like, here's what's changed, because the longer the document it is, the more complex, if it's a paragraph, I can read it once and I can read it twice, but anytime, like when we're doing union contracts or anything that gets longer and longer and longer, it's nice to be able to just go through and look at it as a markup. And I think that's something that, is consistently asked for enough. So I think as we bring things to, you guys are all part of those conversations in this committee, but I think it's kind of like, here's the marked up version. What was started is there, and here's the stuff that's been added and the stuff that's been taken away, and then comments about what the thought process was
Yeah.
for it, so.
But
That's the problem
it's
that
gonna
I
be
have.
real complicated. I mean, there's two ordinances that we're combining, so giving it a snapshot would be tough.
But when you're trying to figure out that this is amending this ordinance, how does the city council, who wasn't in on that, say, what did you amend? I mean, do I have to literally read it side by side?
I mean,
That's onerous, that's a terrible way to do it.
Correct.
So even in, what we're doing right now in the planning board for the downtown plan, is there are comments off to the side. It is a Word document, and it shows like that we're taking this out and we're adding this in. And that's what I'd like to see, I'd like to see, especially on an ordinance, so that I don't have to read them word for word to find out what happened, because I don't know what was changed.
Well, Chelsea's the one that did a
Chelsea.
shitload of the work, so
well,
if you
if
could
you
summarize
want
it.
it, again, I have all of the red line documents and highlights, and
Well,
et cetera.
I think the city council needs to see what the changes are.
I agree.
That's the bottom line,
So,
not just the finished project.
and again, I 100% agree. I think that honestly, this might be a good topic of discussion for admin and finance after, like, creating a process of just, this is the requirements when you're doing these changes. Because one thing I would really like to see, because I know when I've come through with changes, it might be a more updated document from the previous changes, because again, it goes through a whole life cycle, right? So it'd be really helpful, I feel, to have a timestamp at the bottom or a date stamp saying this was last updated this date by X. Like, so then that way we know who to ask questions to, and then also when that was last done, so you can look at your document and be like, oh, I have an older version, I need the newer version. I think that'd be really helpful, and just having that process kind of in stone to where it's consistent throughout the entire council would be crucial. But in terms of the red lines and all of that for this, I do have copies for both that have Danae's, Dennison's, my comments, Jody's, like everybody's comments on those.
I'm not concerned about the comments.
And
That's what's
again,
changed.
and the changes, the red lines, the highlights, the italic, all of it.
And,
So-
and just to add my clarification, when we have it in the packet for, I mean, and I think that's helpful for the public to see too.
Oh, agreed.
But I think when we actually have the action when we're approving an ordinance or resolution, that should be a clean copy. That should not have the comments. But the working document going into that, I know when I was on council, it was like, what changed? And so that's and I think we've done that as general in a whole. I
I
think,
just don't think it's as publicly, I think it's there within these meetings and shared between the folks within those working meetings, but again, I don't think that's always gone to the full council.
yeah, and I guess that was my 2 cents. As we move, and it's not just, this is just one that's up, but I think anytime, the whole idea of this second half of the agenda is so that the other half of the council can come up to speed on something that council, committee A, B, or C has been doing. So it's like, hey, here's the before and after of our work, and here's what we're proposing
Mhm.
that we'd like to get your buy-in on.
Yeah, so I think when it's in discussion mode, we can provide both and have that in the agenda packets, and then when it's actually up for action, it's the finalized product.
And there's, Lonnie, so traditionally, we have not included things in the packet for the second half of the agenda, for the discussion stuff.
No, we have.
Have we?
Yeah, if it's
Okay.
if it's on the main agenda, we include.
Oh,
stuff
okay, so
if
that's-
it's available.
If it's on just this, we don't, but if it's on here for discussion, then we include it there. Okay. And we just didn't this time. Like, we don't have a markup copy.
Well, I don't think we've ever provided the markup copy.
No, we've always done the copy that's going to council that's, you know,
The final.
the final,
Yeah.
or the draft, the
The
draft.
Yeah.
That when it's in that below one, and then the council can make changes whatsoever, you know, to those ones, and then it'll come back.
Okay.
With those changes, they're just not a tracked one like she's.
I think it only applies when you're amending an ordinance. I mean,
Then it
that's the point.
changes it, when there's
Yeah,
a before and after.
When we're changing an ordinance is when we need to see what was changed.
And like I said, this sounds like, I heard Jody say this is probably looking for a February thing, so we can do that for just kind of a discussion next time.
Yeah, that ordinance has a lot more work to be done, because we have all of our business registration categories need to be updated so they match our resolution we passed, and that hasn't happened yet. So really, all we're looking at in that business registration ordinance right now is feedback on what we've done with the short-term rental.
I have two requests because I do have to leave. We received concern on B, clean up the STR and the Red Lodge zoning document. So the admin and finance committee can make suggestions to the zoning board, but it is not up to admin and finance to clean up a zoning document. So I think that set off members of the zoning, planning and zoning, as you might imagine. The other thing, the STR annual review, I've been asking for in land use and planning since June, because that's what the ordinance says, that in June we would get that, we didn't. And you might consider, Tom Kuntz at the Business Alliance meeting yesterday said the problem is that the registration closes the end of June. And his department, the fire department, has to do reviews on every single short-term rental, which makes his busiest season totally insane. And then the other thing is, there is that slop period till September. And you might consider making this annual review in September, and maybe even the registrations due. I mean, I think that the timing needs to change. I know that people wait till the last minute to do the registration. And because of that, the fire department is running around like crazy during a very busy season. So he would prefer to see it, what did he say?
Oh, January.
Well,
Yeah.
they're doing
Yeah,
December,
during the
it's, it's kind of like if you get your dog license, what you have to do is provide proof that your dog has rabies, or has his rabies shot.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But that doesn't mean you have to go to the vet January 1 because everybody's registering their dogs on January 2nd. You know, you could have gone to the vet at any time. So these guys can have done their, and there was still a discussion about whether that was gonna be driven by them sending out their notifications, or if it was gonna be driven by the city administratively, but some of it may be just informationally. Yes, when you register, you have to provide proof that it has been done within the last year, or that it's current, but just like our dog licenses, it doesn't, they don't have to correspond and align.
And Tim Ryan came in last week, with the new gal that's gonna replace him when he retires. And they are creating a website to make it easier on the fire department and then for us over here and stuff. So they are working on trying to, but I don't think we can't change when their registrations are due.
Because it's the end of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, our
But the fire
registrations
stuff-
and licensing is gonna be the fiscal year,
Yeah.
but,
But the fire stuff, that they're working on that.
And just a little bit of insight on this too, so the issue that the fire department is having, and Tom even said this yesterday, was the problem is because these registrations came due in June, most folks, that's when they already did it, but it's an annual review, so a lot of folks don't think to do it 3 months earlier, even though they can, they're waiting till it expires. And so that's gonna be the conversation that the fire department, I mean, I know that Tim has already had that conversation with us, as well as other property managers in the area. I don't know if they've reached out to general public on that at this point, but I mean, I've already made the plan with Tim that we're gonna be doing our reviews in January, just to alleviate that issue. Plus, it's also when I'm already doing my public accommodations renewals. So, I mean, all of that's already, like, again, it's just a matter of when it comes due, that's when people are gonna do it. But if you have that conversation, like, hey, we could really use your help. And I think it's just something from the city's point of view, where when you're due these, like, these, just telling folks when they're getting their registration, you can get this review done at any point throughout the year. And it has been recommended that you do it sooner than June 1st to have it ready by July 1st. So I think that is just a really easy touch point that we can have included in process, but again, it's not just the city's fault for having these registrations due at a certain point, it's also just how nature of the beast is of when all those registrations and all those inspections became due.
Well, if both, I don't know how many professionally managed, companies there are, but, you know, like 76 of those,
Yeah, that will take a big
Houses.
load off.
yeah, that'll take a little bit of a load off, for
And
sure.
of the short-term annual review, are we gonna have a presentation tonight?
Correct.
And Jody, do you wanna go through the presentation this morning? Just to do a dry run? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, if you want to, that would be great. I'm just on my phone.
we did not have that in the packet, is that correct?
No, no, it's just,
Yeah, I think that should have gone to land use and planning as well.
It-
It didn't.
no,
Okay.
because it's an administrative thing that our administrative department handles. Land use and planning, I mean, it's completely has to do with the numbers that we've already passed. So
Well, I
we had
asked for it,
discussed
I
this
didn't
earlier.
Because it hasn't been ready until literally this morning.
And it was, but according to the ordinance, it was June, and
Oh,
that's why I'm saying I
Well-
passed it, and I know it's December.
Once,
So
Sandy-
it's fine, let's wait.
We
Sandy,
get
let me
that.
say something really quick,
You know, the
okay?
reason
There,
for the wait
there
is
is no way we could, I'm sorry, let me just say, there's no way we could have done this in June because we did not have our new numbers. It would have been irrelevant information because we didn't know who was going to renew their registration until they did so, the end of July. And then they still have, 30 days to decide if they're going to renew their existing registration. So if we would, and maybe we need to change that in our ordinance, because
Exactly.
having a
I
presentation.
think that's what the
That's
comment
where I
was,
go.
yeah.
So, real quickly, one thing that I think, and again, we can include this in the ordinance, there's two things that are actually being reviewed in June. The most significant one is reviewing the total dwellings. I think that's where that June date came from, is total dwellings, to figure out where we are against our threshold, right? That's where that number came from. For this review, I think it got tied to that date, even though it's not realistic. So I think it's really easy for us to include that in 963 and say that we will have an annual review of these numbers to figure out where we are against the cap, but then come September, we can have an actual review, or again, call it October, give it time for the city to get the information together, to get all the data, get all the registrations in, and then we can do an actual annual review when it's a little bit slower season, in terms of
Well, and
the process,
Yeah, but-
right?
Hey, Chelsea, I kind of question on, I think the review that they were talking about in that was specifically just to see where we're at with the threshold. I
Yeah,
don't know
exactly.
that we were ever supposed to do like this whole big review like we're doing tonight. Like the state of short-term rentals in Red Lodge. I mean, are we
I
really
think
gonna
what
do
is-
that every single year? We
I
don't
think
do it
we
with
should.
any other businesses in town.
But this is a threshold, this is a limit on people's rights on how they use their property.
Right, and
We all know
yes,
it's a hot topic. We all know it's a
we
hot
do that
topic.
every, excuse me, we do that every year. I mean, the city is constantly, Danae does that all the time. See where we're at, to see where we're, she's constantly, and admin and finance committee has been keeping an eye on that the whole time. And yes, I mean, it's fine, and I did announce that where we were at, like in September, where we're at with the threshold, and we'd actually gone down. So I guess I'm just questioning, is it just the city itself kind of keeping track of it, reviewing it to see where we're at, or is it a whole presentation?
Madam Chair, does our ordinance say that this will be an annual review, or does it? Or does it say that, did it just say that it'll be reviewed in 1 year? Do you know?
I think it was annual.
I'd have to look. Chelsea, you know, if it's off the top of your head.
I want to double check, I don't want to say anything out of.
Okay, so,
But we're
We
working
need
on
to be
changing
transparent.
it now, so,
Transparency, and so it needs to always, that should be reviewed and, gone by just as an informational to the city council, so that the entire public understands where we are. It's just a hot button topic for a
excuse
state
me.
economy.
So again,
Right,
I think
and
that's reviewing of 963 and just making sure it says what we meant it to and want it to, and maybe opinions have changed now from what they did, a year ago. I mean, that's why it's being revisited, so.
Limit
Yeah,
will
and I
be established
guess
by Red Lodge City staff each June annually. In the event that the limit is reached, the waiting list shall be established to facilitate new permits with existing permits, or when existing permits expire and are not renewed. It does not say anything about doing an annual review. I think it was in, I think it reviews the numbers, specifically what I just said, but not,
Not the
not a full
presentation.
presentation.
But this administration is all about transparency.
I agree. I'm not
Nobody's
disagreeing with you,
disagreeing.
but
We're trying to do that, Sandy.
Yeah, I'm
We're
just
trying
saying
to.
for transparency, I don't see why we
I,
would review it and then not let everybody know where we are.
That's what we're doing.
but,
No, not,
but
I mean, everybody.
I did do
That's
that
what we're
in
doing.
September also.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying, and I don't know why I was getting pushback on that.
No, but I also did
Gonna
announce it in September.
Yes, please.
And I don't care when it's done, but it should be whenever it states in the resolution, or in the ordinance. In the ordinance.
doesn't-
So our
specify.
wording needs to make clear that the June review is a evaluation against the number, and then when practicable, a presentation to update the overall picture shall be given, which isn't part of the ordinance in what I just heard, but you're saying you'd like to see it as part of the ordinance.
I would like to have a deadline. I believe in deadlines, not when applicable. In other words, if in June, we find out how many properties we have, so every June we know how many households there are or addresses, right? Then once you have that number, it's really easy to go into your registration, find out how many of those properties are registered through property management or through the owner. It's a pretty simple thing. It doesn't have to be a whole deal. It's simply one sheet that says, here's how many households are in Red Lodge as of June 2024. Of those, blank number were registered as property managed, and a number of those were registered as.
And we did that, we got that from Danae on September 1st, this is dated. So,
I just think
And
it would
I
be from
And I
around
did
here.
announce it to council at that time, as soon as we had that information. I did announce where we were at with the cap or the threshold.
I'd like to
in
have it-
September.
I've asked, I have something to forward, sort of a minute.
I don't think that's a problem, Sandy.
No, I don't
I-
ever see it as a problem, I just think it wasn't done and I'd like to see it done. That's all.
Okay.
It's not hard to do, just needs to have a sheet so that we are transparent to all those. I mean, this room was packed and the Roosevelt was packed on this issue, so I think that we need to bend over backwards to be transparent. And I do have to go.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Okay, well, you can see the presentation tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and we've only got 5 minutes to, well, I guess there's not a meeting after this one, so we can go to the hour if needed, but,
I have an issue to bring up.
oh, what?
An issue to bring up. Well, I mean, if we're ready.
I'm pointing to the person who's in charge of the meeting is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, this is hers to run.
Yes, Doug, what is your issue? Bye, Sandy.
Lonnie's familiar with this. I was contacted by, Jeff, the airport manager. He is looking to get some data on electricity usage as far as kilowatts, because he's looking at, conducting a study. He's actually in the process of doing a study of the effectiveness of solar panels at the airport. And as part of that study that he's doing, he would like to know how much the city is currently paying, because he's envisioning that once these panels are installed, that the city will benefit. But he needs to know the data, because he's, like you said, he's gonna be comparing it to
What the city is paying where? The whole city?
electricity.
At the airport, at the city hall, the police
Well, I
department?
don't know.
Just the lights at the airport? That might be some, I mean, since this isn't on the agenda, can we even talk about this?
Yeah, we can talk, we just can't take action, but what I can offer, and I saw that Lonnie had responded to him yesterday, the stuff specifically at the airport is actually not we don't pay the bill. So that would be stuff that they go to the airport board that we've outsourced managing it to. So that was part of, I didn't understand from the question as to what it is, but if it's specific to the airport, that request doesn't actually go to us. And in fairness, the person it goes to is actually his boss.
Well, I guess I wish I knew more to talk to him intelligently, because he's pretty set on doing, he's doing the study.
Okay.
Because he's thinking that the solar lights will benefit the city of Red Lodge, even though that's after the effect on the airport. Because the airport lights, the runway lights, whatever, that's the number one thing they'll take care of, but he's saying it will produce much more so that the city can benefit. And that's the reason he's looking for the data.
Which we don't, us as a city doesn't have that data, because I don't get the power bills for it.
Northwest Energy, maybe you could start with?
Huh.
I think the letter that he got, was he included on the response that you sent? I was thinking you were on the
I sent it
response.
directly to
Yeah,
him.
she said,
Yeah, so, in fairness, for lack of a better way to do it, it'd be the equivalent if he called and asked us at the city, hey, can you tell us what Laurel pays for their city hall for electricity and power?
You're saying it's a total separate entity.
It's a different entity. It is a different entity. It's not us. We own the land, but if we had, well, the closest thing that we really have as kind of a comparison is the library. So the library is a city-owned facility, but it's run as its own entity. They're funded in part from the city, they're funded in part from the county.
Okay.
But their utilities, their bills, their everything, there's another board that handles that.
So the airport board has their own electricity bill that they pay?
That is correct, and that is the
No, I
purpose of their
Ask
existing.
Angie.
Well, I think
Angie
that's
might
the
know.
disconnect.
Angela?
Or, yeah,
Yeah.
Angela, sorry,
Like
Angie.
I said, and that's interestingly enough, that's his boss.
Yeah,
That's who he reports to.
Well,
So his boss is who is responsible for,
But it seems to me that he is unaware of that when I talk to him. So, I don't see how.
it is not from a lack of opportunity that he is unaware of that. Sometimes people don't like the answers they get when they ask a question, and so they go ask mom, or they go ask
No,
dad,
really?
or they,
That's interesting. Okay, I will get back to
do you
you.
have kids?
I do.
Yeah, firsthand experience. Okay, no, that's fine. I'll be glad to push back to him and just let him know that.
Well, and I think Lonnie, he was on that response too, or did you just send that to
No,
Doug?
it's
Oh.
Doug, and then I think you and
Yeah,
Jody were the.
I was,
only
okay,
ones.
so the answer is, the information that he's requesting from, is not a city, it would be directed toward the airport manager or,
Isn't he the airport
I'm
manager?
sorry, the airport board
Okay,
that he reports to,
okay.
so, or Angela,
Well,
so,
hopefully that will nip it in the bud right there.
so.
I'm not sure why
they-
he picked me out to ask the question.
You're in Ward One, he lives in Ward One, and so, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And the answer is, he asked mom and he asked dad, and so now he's asking grandpa, no offense. I didn't mean for that to come out wrong. I'm just saying, he's going till he gets the answer that he wants. He asked Uncle Doug, is that better?
Dave called me a grandpa.
I can read it already.
That's beside the point.
I can be grandpa and you can be dad if you want.
Okay, well,
Thank
thank you. Jody, do you want me to just go through all this, or do you wanna jump in wherever?
Yeah, no, go ahead and go through all of it, because I
Okay.
don't know if hopefully I'm gonna make it tonight, but, if I don't, you know.
You will be just a participant and audience member if you do tonight, remember.
Right.
Oh, you're talking about if you're not
I
here in
know.
person.
Chelsea?
Yeah,
feel
if I'm
free
not
to-
there in person, you're gonna have to present it, so.
Okay, so we passed ordinance 963 in August of 2023, and that established a 20% threshold of total units, and, or threshold cap, limit,
Limit.
whatever we called it. We changed it.
went with limits, so
Yeah.
when we actually do that for those presentations.
Do you wanna
we
just-
change- There was
Yep,
a lo-
change it to whatever we called it.
And I would say, just as we're doing this, by the way, please take note of how much text you have on that slide and how hard it is to read. Now, granted, it'll be a little bit bigger tonight,
Yeah,
but there will still be a,
oopsie.
I might go through and do some cleanup on it in terms of like visual, if that's okay with everyone, just make it pretty.
Oh, that's,
make it bigger.
I was hoping you would.
Yeah, I
readable.
agree.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, one other thing I can do is this. Yeah. And I can't see what's coming up. So with that established 3 categories, owner occupied, property managed, professionally managed, which was going to get 55% of that, limit, sorry, whoopsie. I'm gonna have to do it this way, so I can make changes. I have the
If you see any typos, please fix them.
I will,
That'll be Chris's job, she's good at that.
yep. All right, maybe you guys can't see this, but, and then the third type was the all other rentals, just, you know, the onesie twosies, and that would get 45% of that limit. And then when we look at a comparison of 2023 to the last year, the number of residential units established by the Carbon County DES, or just Carbon County, I guess we can leave it at that. It was 1855, now it is 1910. And when I say now, when is that number? Is that just, was that just September 1st?
I think so. Whenever we got that number from Danae, I think it was, when she sent it out was September 1st. So we really do need to change that June. I don't.
Yeah, I've already made some changes to the ordinance that I can present to you guys.
Okay, because we just can't get any of this information in by June. It's just not available.
Yeah, no, it's not feasible.
September, I'm just gonna put September 10th.
Okay.
That's what Danae for. And then if you look at the total in each category, in each type, 2023 versus 2024, that type 1 did not change. So one thing we should probably have in here then are the number, so 197.
Down below.
The 20% of that?
Are you about 20% of the difference between 815.5 and 1910?
No, 20% of 1910, that's 197, is that correct?
No, I think that you have more. Hold on. Hold tight, math, I'll map it, I did math, not really.
I wouldn't say of that number, I would say of 1910.
Right.
1910, that'd be 382 registrations available.
382.
And what I would probably do is have year-over-year increase of X,
Yeah,
So
I'm
that-
good at that.
which is basically 20
So 1850.
or 25% of 55.
Wait, what?
So get rid of that number in your third bullet. So you said 20% of that number, 1910, that number.
Yeah,
is-
I'm just writing notes here,
Okay,
this is what,
at the end of that, fourth paragraph bullet,
yep,
in parentheses, an increase of X units. In other words, what's 25% of the 55, right?
20% of the 1855 is 371, so we have increased by 9 registrations.
So 9 additional registrations available.
Yep.
Which is 20% of 55.
gotcha. Anyway, well, you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the pullout here, and I
Yep.
think that's an important point of like how many total, I'm just gonna bold that.
Okay.
A little bit laggy. And then type 2, these are professionally managed.
So type 2, oh yeah, sorry, type 2, I saw the number 2, but yes, type
Okay.
2, professionally managed.
They had 61 out of 161 active registrations and a remaining amount of 143. They still have a lot of room to grow. Or, sorry, it was from 60. Sorry, I was not prepared to do this, obviously. 61 active registrations last year, 76. I'm just gonna call it last year and this year. And now they have 76 and 134 still available. And type 3 actually went down from 134 to 118, and they still have 54 registrations available. And then on the bottom, Jody, do you wanna, this is confusing on the bottom,
Can you scroll down a little bit?
maybe. Let's
It,
go
it
back.
just says, we asked Danae how many of the short-term rentals had converted to long-term. And they don't always tell her that, but of the ones that told her why they were pulling it out, that's the number of ones that converted that she knows about, from short-term to long-term.
So could we combine 2024 with this last section? You guys can't see this, but,
So near.
We trust you, yeah, right.
what, I don't know what's happening here. Why is this not?
This, what's,
Full screen?
yeah, we were in, there's also a Zoom over here that's.
It's a window. Oh, there we go. Okay, so see on that very bottom, 12/4/2024, I mean, can we just make where it says 2024? Oh, Jesus.
Ooh, that.
It's pretty, huh?
Here we go.
Oh, those,
Can we combine
those
those, is what I'm trying to say? And just say this is where we are as of today, because I think it's confusing. See, 2023, 2024, and then as of 12/4.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like, the
Oh,
two is
yeah.
the same.
Yep.
she just gave us the updated numbers, because those first numbers were from September 1st, and then that's as of, 12/4 when she gave me the numbers.
Okay, so can I just change those then?
If you want to, yeah, if it's less confusing that way, you sure can.
No, I hear what she's saying, I agree.
So kind of
Yep.
going to your top bullet, and it says an increase of additional, it could just say a change of, because if you say an increase, then you don't need the additional. But it's saying, here's what the net change is, and is that what you guys are talking about doing down below, say this is net
No,
up to, down to?
No, we're talking about the fact that as of 12/4, the numbers that we had there versus, or, I'm sorry, not as of 12/4, but originally we said 2024 had this number, but then we had as of 12/4, that was a different number, which is here in 2024. So, exactly, it was confusing, so we fixed it.
That's
And
why
then
we're doing the dry run.
Yeah.
So overall, there's 9 more units available than last year, but there's 1 less actually in use than last year.
Yeah, and I think we could just separate this graph into, or separate this page into 2 slides, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might make it easier.
Okay, I'm just gonna put a note in there. Okay, and then we go into a pretty graph. Registrations by type, you can see that type 1, that didn't change, 2 to 2. Type 2, the professionally managed, they actually grew in both categories. Both, how many they have and how many are available. And type 3 went down in the number, but they still have, then they grew in the number available. Make sense?
I'm seeing a lot of people that want to do it themselves.
You guys have a lot of business, growth opportunity. So for how many people did not renew from 2024 to 2025?
Can, rather than per Danae, can we just say per front office or office staff or something?
Of course.
Yeah, city staff.
Per city hall, or, yeah, city staff, yeah, thank you.
And that's a good call out too, the conversion to long-term rentals. 5 of type 2 did not renew, 16 of type 3. And we have 40 new rentals.
In the year 2023, but this year we only had 15 new rentals.
Yeah. Resort tax software, 86 short-term rentals were identified that were not previously registered. So basically caught with the software, which resulted in a $74,000, back tax collection.
I did add, a little information about that software, just kind of give people a little context.
Yeah, the muni res,
Mm-hmm.
oopsie. Yeah,
Things that we know and are versed in, but other folks might not be.
In that first bullet where it says we're brought online, do we want to say identified and registered, or?
Or made compliant.
I'm good with either, whatever you want. I was struggling last night with the right
Okay, now I'm
wording for
getting
that,
confused, because Chris is sharing her screen, and,
I'm working on it.
and,
this is the beauty of
yeah.
real-time editing.
Instead of made, I made. How many did we make?
Oh, yeah, good call, thank you.
How many did we bring into compliance?
Ooh, I like that.
And then the business registration fees, you know, we, at the same time this kind of came on board, we also increased our fees from $50 to a schedule of fees, and so we actually went from $5,550 to $49,250, and then down to $49,000.
One thing that I think would be important to note on this, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but describing what those fees are used for. So essentially, administrative work, the process of tracking and monitoring STRs, tax collections, the
Yeah.
administrative end, because that's a really big number.
Well, and quite frankly, this is a labor-intensive
Yep.
effort to track, not to mention the software that's doing it, comes out of that. That's $13,000 a year?
13,000.
So again, I just think it's worth making that point, because otherwise people are going to ask, like, well, why do you need to collect that much money for this?
Yeah.
Well,
Just to
Tracking
make
it
sure
or
you realize
monitoring and handling is a labor-intensive, and the software is $13,000.
the 13 grand comes out of resort tax right now, not out of the business registration fee,
Oh,
just so you know.
we should know.
Why,
We've talked
should it
about
in the,
that.
should it in the future come out of resort tax?
Well, I know resort tax, because ultimately that software is collecting the resort tax fees. I mean, it helps us collect that, and the fees for resort tax go into resort tax, so that ultimately pays for it. The 13, like business registration and stuff, that's kind of also on, I mean, it's still used for the short-term rentals, but, you know, we're collecting taxes too. So, I mean, it could go either way on both sides of it, but,
But
because I know-
currently, Meares is being paid for by resort tax.
correct, and the resort tax committee has discussed this when we've done all the budget stuff, which Jody can, come on.
And then
Yeah,
in
they,
terms- Go ahead, Jody.
I was just gonna say, currently, the resort tax committee did not have an issue with it coming out of it, especially since that software had allowed us to collect, you know, over $70,000 in back resort tax, so.
I'm just thinking, do we need $49,000 for, is it, because that's almost a full-time position.
No, that's half of a full-time position, and I would say that this comes pretty dang close to sucking up that much time.
And
This
that's
is,
all,
this is,
it's
this
a,
is,
that's what's gonna be asked.
it's one of the more labor-intensive things that they do, but I don't think we should include the 13,000 for the software if it's coming out of resort tax.
yeah,
Oh my gosh. Sorry.
I are good at computers.
I'm also typing at a weird angle right now. so bear with me. Oh, my God. You can go to the next slide while I figure this out.
Okay. And there's the graph, there's a pretty graph. How much they increased from 2022 to 2023 to 2024. And then the hotline complaints, we had 2 total in 2023, they were both related to trash, and in 2024, we had 5, and just a variety of complaints. And this is one of the graphs that I'm thinking doesn't really explain much, Jody.
Yeah, it makes it look
Yeah.
like everyone's really pissed off about noise, even though there's 2.
So I would suggest just removing that one.
Just
Yeah, I think the
delete,
data's-
delete the slide, you're fine.
Okay.
Delete whatever you want.
All right.
I have, will not hurt my feelings.
Now, if we go back to the data on the slide prior to that one,
Yes.
that one right there, that's talking about the noise complaints. But one of the things that's being addressed in this resolution update, if I recall correctly, I know we've talked about it in the front office, is how do we make this not a de facto way for a neighbor to shut down just their neighbor just because they don't want an STR there? So it's like, there needs to be a follow-up conversation about when there's a complaint, it's registered, it's validated by the police force, and then once it's validated, then that has an impact, because
Yeah, 'cause I know for a fact one of those was on one of my properties, but it was actually one of our long-term units.
well, there's another one that we have that they just don't want an they just don't want a short-term rental next door, and they call and the officers have gone up there and said, this is not an issue, or this isn't quiet hours, or this isn't, and so one of the things we're looking for again, we want them administrating, we want them to have the clear guidelines of when is somebody's license in jeopardy. What we don't want to do is de facto create a mechanism
Yep.
where somebody can shut down their neighbor from using their property as a short-term rental. And so there was some, part of what we need to make sure when we're done with this is it explains, it's validated, or complaints that are registered and validated, or I think we need to be able to speak to what happens once a complaint is received, that it's validated by the officers, and only then does it potentially impact whether somebody's license is going to be renewed or not.
So do we have that process in place right now?
We track whether it's validated or not, but I think that was it was my understanding that was one of the things that was getting fixed in the wording. But my conversation is with the front office and Danae specifically.
Yeah, I don't think that exists in either ordinance.
Okay. My 2 cents from an admin side is it needs to be clear that when we talk about, even if it's just validated complaints can jeopardize, or when we talk about, because there's a thing in there that talks about if you get excessive complaints.
Wait,
Does it not say that? Okay.
I think that's something that might be city hall process, but it's not something that we have in an ordinance.
So then let me ask you a question. I'm Joe Bag of Donuts resident. What do you do with these complaints?
No, I think that's a great question. And I think up to now, there hasn't been any sort of, now, I'm reading through 907, because if it was in somewhere, that's probably where it would be.
My understanding or recollection, and I'm old, so I could be remembering totally wrong. But there was something that said like excessive complaints, and I think the need was that it needs to be validated complaints, or,
And I feel like that was in one of the ordinances that didn't go through,
okay.
but I'm not positive. In a year, 2 years.
To me, I think the hotline is just a mechanism for people to be able to call and register complaints with the city. And then it's up to the city then to, like you say, send police officers out, validate what happens. And then, yes, I mean, if something, becomes a constant issue, you know, do we just have that procedure in place? Does it actually have to be an ordinance that says if you get, you know, if you get 20 complaints for the same thing and you're not fixing it and they're validated, then we don't renew your
I would say
license.
if there is ever a time you're going to deny somebody's renewal, then yes, that needs to be in an ordinance. You need to have why you're not doing it.
In 907, under regulations, the owner and their representatives acknowledge the city has the right to suspend operation of any short-term rental when the city determines the rental is causing or contributing to imminent public health, safety hazard, or nuisance as defined by Municipal Code 411. So that, to me, we have the hotline as an identifier, but it's the city's responsibility that if they determine based through all that validation. So there is a place where that's identified, but not specifically around the hotline.
Okay. And it doesn't say that it's 1 or 2 or 3
No.
infractions.
It is at the city to determine whether or not it's a nuisance or not, so.
Okay.
I think that's fair,
And-
because again, we've had this same conversation with like events and that kind of thing, where at a certain point, it is the city's responsibility and the staff, and we trust the staff to be able to make an educated and a decision.
Yeah, and what I want to do is make sure that staff is making is applying a decision-making process that council's put out. We don't want to put one particular person's opinions or inputs or whatnot in the position of doing that. They're just applying the rules that are there.
Okay, so do we want to have that in 907? And do we want to have a specific number, or do we want, because I don't feel like a specific number is necessary. I feel like that's kind of hard to decide, but I will kind of lean over to Lonnie on that.
I would say, yeah, reach out just to Danae if she wants a hard number, or does council want a hard number? Does she think there should be a hard number? I don't know.
Right. I feel like if someone's getting a call over and over again for the same issue, then at that point, is there a penalty, is there a fine, or is it you're suspended until?
What I can tell you we do is that software creates a ticket. We have a follow-up that says an officer responded and validated as real or not real.
Okay.
So that we have.
That's
We've
good.
discussed on how to do that.
So I think that'd be good to add here, that hotline calls are validated by the city and the police department to determine whether they're real and whether they need to be taken into consideration.
I think you're saying the city is probably safer, but most of the time in practice, that's the police department, but
Just say city staff.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
what I
city,
was
I think
gonna
city
say.
staff is fine. And maybe that's just a footnote asterisk. And maybe that's it. Calls are, what's the, not the veracity of complaints are validated by city staff. Are investigated and validated by.
And I think the public is going to want to know that, you know, you're actually trying to, if it is validated, what do you do? What's the resolution for the, you know, it is an issue, it's been validated, and here's what we do to, you know, tell them to correct it.
Well, and I think that the part of the code that Chelsea read that says we can deny a license based on that if there's a trend that's not responded to. And I'm
Well,
okay
here's
with
the
that
question,
in there.
do we get a phone call from the city if there's an issue?
Does the property, yes.
Okay, I've never gotten a call, so that's good. But, again, I'm pretty sure one of those properties was one of our properties on the 4th of July.
Well, they would have known because an officer would have showed up.
To them, but then would I know? So I can resolve it too, put that person on a blacklist, put that, you know, charge them penalties and fines, kick them out. There's a lot of course of action that we would like to be able to take too.
Continue, I'll have an answer for you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, let's move on. Reserve tax revenue. Increased from 2020 22 to 2023, about 23,000. And then, of course, this year, we don't have the full
Yeah.
amount. But it did drive an increase in that. And this is just for the, what category would this be? Just,
I think that's total.
no, that's not total.
That might be just by category, which they,
Jody, do you know which category this is?
Which part are you looking at?
The resort tax revenue slide, number 11.
Okay, so it's by quarter, and of course, it's kind of weird because the third quarter is July, August, and September. So,
Sorry, what category of resort tax revenue is this? Is this, you know, we
short-term
have
rentals have their own category.
category, okay.
Yeah, they have their own category.
That's right, I thought you were asking by type.
Okay,
I'm sorry, yeah.
So the notification of the property manager happens automatically when the phone call is when there's a complaint.
Oh.
It automatically notifies the emergency contact. So that means that you've never had a property that
Okay.
had a call on the hotline.
Okay, I thought, well, one of those was me, but it's good that it's good.
you're exonerated.
All right, awesome, that's good to know. So we should add that.
Now, when we get to council discussion and action, are you gonna have to recuse yourself from this discussion?
I personally don't think I should, but at the same time, I think that the big thing is what's happening here isn't really going to be affecting my business all that much. It's stuff that's already in place. But more so, it's a level of expertise that I think is important to have. So, I don't know.
And I understand the dilemma between expertise and conflict of interest.
Yeah, because that's the thing to me is, it's expertise, more often than not, a lot of this actually goes against my business in some ways. So,
Yeah, I mean, you've been a really solid voice in this whole thing. And I don't think you're necessarily
I'm
acting
probably not
in
doing it for me.
your best interest. Yeah,
No,
I
I'm
feel
just
like you,
trying to bring a very, I think more often than not, I'm actually putting myself kind of under the fire on it, so.
Yeah, from an optics standpoint, can we have somebody, not you, do the presentation
Totally.
tonight?
Mhm.
And I think when we do the voting on the ordinance, and you could check with Dennison, but I think by the letter of the law, and I also think the optics, you should probably not be part of the discussion or vote. You should just say, because this is part of my business, I'll be refraining, or this has the potential to impact my business, I'll be refraining from discussion. If you wanna reach out to the,
Yeah, I'll talk to Dennison.
because there's part of me, you know, there's council meetings and there's discussions and afterwards, which are, first off, they're there, but I don't want to create an unnecessary spotlight for you or a target on your back either.
I'm used to it.
I know, and I get that, but.
No, I hear what you're saying. I do think we just ask Dennison. I would like to be a part of the discussions, and I understand not having a vote.
Well, but the problem is abstaining, and here's the part that's fuzzy. So abstaining technically means you're also not part of the discussion and influencing. It's not just vote or not vote.
Okay.
It's not, I'm all gonna persuade you, but then I won't vote. But that's also in the official meeting. So does that mean you never get to voice your opinion? Because that seems,
she's got a valuable opinion.
yeah,
She
yeah,
knows the industry.
there's,
It's just like if we were talking about marijuana, I'd want to be
Right,
part of the
exactly. I
discussion
would
to tell you
want her
guys,
in
like,
that
no, that's not
conversation.
how it works. This is how it works.
Exactly,
So-
exactly. Is Dennison around today?
I haven't seen him, but he is around.
yeah, you could reach him by phone. He works out of his other office a lot, so.
So I would just like to say, I understand what you're saying, Dave, I completely, but I would like Chelsea to be involved in the discussion tonight, because she was paramount in getting the changes done, and she understands what's there. And I think it would be best coming from her not this presentation, so to speak, but on the changes we've done to the short-term rental. And if she wants to recuse herself, once they come to public hearings and stuff like that. But for tonight, when we're actually getting input and possibly changing things and getting the discussion done, I'd still like her to be involved.
Okay. And I think ultimately the you talk, you don't talk, or, from a conflict standpoint, is either the person self-proclaims or the council determines or not. So I don't think the mayor gets to vote on that. I think if the council can say, we deem that you are a conflict of interest, and so you stand out, or the person can preemptively stand down.
Well,
But
one thing I will do is,
you can just state, by the way,
yeah, I will make it really clear that, I own a property management company and wanted to bring as much insight to this conversation as possible.
Yeah.
And if anyone is uncomfortable, they're welcome to address that. Yeah?
yeah. And like I said, I raised it from a question. It's not, I don't think that's within the power of my and I'd have to go back and revisit it, but my recollection is not the mayor says, thou shalt not participate. I can advise or say, hey, here's a concern.
Yep.
But I think it's either the individual makes the determination or council makes the determination. I don't think it's the mayor that makes the
Well,
determination.
and honestly, the changes that we're recommending are just cleanup changes. It's really not, it's not, we're not putting in the limit now, we're not
Yeah, if there was
doing
a
things
limit
that are
right
going to
now, I would
restrict
probably
things.
never-
So,
Agreed.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Okay.
And that's the ability to answer that question. Now we've had the practice run at it, so.
Again, I'm not making any sort of financial gain from this change. Except for the fact that, people trust me. I don't have any complaints.
No, I think you've been really, like you said, the opposite. Like, you haven't been protective of your business, but just provide an understanding and trying to make it, hold everybody to a certain standard.
Well, and I said, because when I was on council, when they had the airport rates for rentals come up, and I was the one who said, excuse me, where did you get these numbers from? Show me that these numbers aren't artificially low or high. It's because I knew to ask, and they said, okay, we're above the 50% mark of all the airports. Okay, thank you.
And that's the beauty of having a diverse council where you get a lot of different expertise. You want that, I would hope.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You don't want a bunch of people
Right.
that's like, I have no idea what's going on.
Did we or?
Exactly, and
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and Chelsea brought up a great point, because we aren't changing any limits or, actually, all the changes we are doing should not affect anybody's financial bottom line. And part of recusing yourself is if it will impact you financially, then you cannot vote.
Did we end up changing? I thought I remember part of this discussion was going to be, whether like owner occupied, or there was something that was gonna impact whether something counted against the numbers or not counted against the
There
numbers.
is, additional categories that have been created in 907. So, and that's not a part of this review, but we do have additional categories in 907.
Because that could in fact mean that there's more licenses available, which could impact financially, so.
So I might have to recuse from that one. Specifically, we added on-site managed short-term rentals, temporary short-term rentals, and owner-occupied. The language changed on owner-occupied. Well, the definition and criteria changed for owner-occupied. And then we did update just overall criteria of how you fit into a general short-term rental and a professionally managed and owner-occupied short-term rental. So that did change, and that does directly impact what I do.
But they go back, this presentation is just a historical snapshot too.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, we aren't changing anything, we're just providing an overview. And Chelsea, are you, I don't know how comfortable I am presenting this tonight, honestly.
I am fine with it as long as you guys are.
I feel like you or Jody should be the ones doing this, but
If
If
Jody
Jody's not
can, I
feeling-
think that'd be good.
yeah,
Otherwise, I'd be more than happy to.
okay. So the last two slides are to do with T-bid and the fees collected for, from short-term rentals, which saw a growth of about $2,000, so $2 a night from short-term rentals, companies that have 3 or more properties.
Yep.
So,
This does not apply to your general STR owner that is doing this.
but they could pay if they wanted to. Does anybody do that? No?
So the way that, and that's actually something we're working on with T-bid right now. So the reason for that is part of the
Oh, the
benefit-
map, that's right, yeah,
Exactly.
gotcha.
The benefit of T-bid is the fact that you get put on the Beartooth Highway map. And so when you're paying into it, that's a huge portion of our funds to pay for Beartooth Highway maps. And then in return, you get on that map. But if you have every individual owner that's paying into T-bid on that map, it now becomes a brochure, like it becomes a book. So, and again, I think that there could be some work done. I have no issue with individuals paying into T-bid, personally. I've had a few different statements at the T-bid board though. So,
That probably adds a lot of layers of admin for collection and,
yeah,
yeah.
just trying to track everybody down for those, that would become, and especially considering the very limited role that the chamber does that with, like, they don't have a lot of time allocated specifically for T-bid collection, but that's a big chunk. Because if someone's not paying and they are incorporated in this, I mean, now it even comes from the city where I know we've had to send out
What is
notices and.
that after that 8 that's not there?
Oh, that's Chelsea.
Oh, that's Chelsea's cursor.
Yeah, that's where she is right now.
There, he did it.
My first thought was it was an asterisk, and I thought there's an asterisk without an explanation, but
Yeah.
then I didn't think that's what it was.
And then this last slide, I didn't feel it was particularly, helpful, since we only have 2 numbers.
Yeah, you can delete that.
And is that basically the same, that's just a graphic of the slide before?
Yeah, it's just these 2 numbers right here, so.
People said they wanted graphs to make it pretty, so I added lots
I
of graphs.
really like graphs, thank you, Jody.
Can
Oh,
you,
shit, did I
you can,
No, it's
I just
okay.
Control Z if you want to bring it back, but you could also put the graph right next to it,
Yeah,
just make it smaller
Yeah, I
too.
think-
I was thinking this graph, this
And I was
business
thinking the
registration
same
fee
with
should go in here.
registration fees, we could move that to the same slide.
Yeah,
Because again, they don't change much, but I think visuals are helpful.
yeah.
We could put pictures of puppies.
I don't know, can you, let's see, can I copy this?
Speaking of puppies, I will retain a tight leash on the discussion tonight, just to, so everybody here help. And if it gets necessary, I'll have everybody direct their comments to me directly as a mechanism at my disposal to do that, but
That sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Are you okay with putting this all in one, Jody?
Yeah, no, go ahead and do whatever you want with it. It's great. I totally trust you guys. I haven't done a PowerPoint presentation in probably 20 years, so there you go.
You did awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we got it down to 12 pages.
Perfect. And it won't take that long to go through, obviously. It's gonna be pretty
No.
quick. Just if people have questions along the way.
And I did also just print off, or create essentially a 3-page document with all of this information, if the city wants that to be able to provide on the website, or if we want to be able to print that off for council, whichever, I mean, and this might be a really easy thing, so when Sandy makes that mention of reaching out to the city to figure out where we currently are, this could be a really easy thing to send out to anyone who has questions, versus an entire presentation. Like, I just did a simple PDF with city letterhead.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are fluid. They constantly change, so,
Yeah.
you know,
It's just a point in time, but
Yeah.
good to have historical information.
Yep, I am 100% into that. And then one thing, just kind of talking about that June deadline, I think we should have more I'm not saying we should do it this morning, because it's 10:30, and I know Jody is not feeling well, and we want to preserve her. But just something to think about. So I do feel that that number does need to be calculated annually for what the total dwellings are. But we're not gonna know a final for registrations until September, just because
Correct.
there is a grace period for people to register.
Absolutely. I mean, we have to give ourselves some leeway there. I mean, it's,
So I
we know
think
being
that
on council, not everything happens right when it needs to happen, unfortunately, or when we said it would happen.
Yeah. So I think that we should change that language a little bit to say that annually in June, county will provide total dwellings, and by September, the city will have a total for the limit.
But what about that period where they don't know the new total? Do they have people, I mean, if we ever get to the point where we are approaching that limit, is that gonna be cumbersome for a business who wants to?
I mean, it would make it really difficult, because it's a long process.
Because that's
to
like
set
right in
one
their
up.
season too.
So it'd be really tough, like, if I come to the city in June and be like, hey, I wanna get this place ready for registration, it takes me about 6 weeks to get somebody totally onboarded, depending on the home. So, I mean, if I found out that there's 3 registrations, you can start your application in June, and that's what that grace period is about, is so that way you can go get those inspections and get all those other pieces done, and by September, if you don't have them, then it goes away. So I know that that's something that a few places have done back when it was more of a scare. We didn't, but it was one of those things that you could kind of lock in that remaining registration, but you have a certain amount of time to actually get it in place. So that's where that September grace period came from, especially because a fire department,
Yeah.
getting those inspections, it was really difficult, especially, I mean, I had a situation where we were waiting for weeks because it was a new property and they were all out on wildland, like, there was no one to do the inspection, so you're just twiddling our thumbs and waiting, so. And new ones, it's not like I can do that in January if I don't know about it until July.
I think we should, probably, get staff input on what works best for them on that,
Yeah.
so. And we'll just make our ordinance work for whatever works for staff. I mean, it
Yeah,
was kind of just thrown in there because that was when our renewals were coming in, so, but as far as actually getting all the numbers and stuff done, I think that Danae wasn't able to get us those numbers until September this year, so, when everything was finalized.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, I would say.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, I hope you feel better, Jody, and
Yeah.
Chelsea, you're gonna work on this today. Do you need my help with anything, or do you have this? Trying to,
Sorry.
just trying to plan my day, so I'm happy to collaborate if you want, or I've got the day off from work, so I can help if you need it. If you don't, if you're just ready to go with it,
No, I
that's
think I
fine.
can tinker with this, sorry, it's just one of my employees who's having problems, so they should call Tony.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then I would like to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Feel better, Jody. See you tonight, hopefully.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.